we are here today because, like it or not, and I think most of us are here because we don't really like it, baby steps are the way to go. Baby steps are more helpful than trying to implement the perfect system right out of the starting gates. And you know what? Most of us search the internet, try to find answers and solutions for our management issues, our productivity issues, our homemaking, home house cleaning issues, because we all have issues. And what we're really looking for, if we got to the bottom of it, is the system that will work. But we don't uncover what we mean by work. I know when I was spending the most kind of research mode time trying to figure out the perfect house cleaning system or laundry routine or any of that stuff, what I realized is that my kind of unspoken definition of a system that worked meant that I didn't have to work. The system would work so that I didn't have to. And you know what? I never found that system. So we think of the system that we are trying to implement, or the routine, the checklist, the plan, as being the thing that carries the weight, that makes the progress happen. But system or no system, we are the ones who make things happen. And we think of the end goal that we want, whether that's a clean house, or maybe we are thinking, again, without really realizing it, that the laundry will be done, right? We'll come up with the routine, and we're thinking in terms of being finished with these projects and responsibilities that are actually ongoing. And so we keep hunting around for answers and solutions that just aren't actually out there. And we get frustrated because no matter what we do, we're still the ones having to make it happen. And that's actually the way it's always going to be. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to get a bit of an attitude adjustment, a mindset shift around our responsibilities and around making real progress, because we don't actually wake up with a whole new self, with a whole new set of habits overnight. A system will not remake our life in 1 week or 1 month. We're still our same selves, and the work is still the same, whether we have a routine to handle it or not. Routines are totally helpful. Even systems are actually helpful, but only when we treat them in accordance with what they are, which isn't the thing that actually makes the work happen. That's us. And we can't get to our imagined end goal overnight. Every step of the way, we have to take every step along the way. And we will actually make surer, steadier progress if we take baby steps. Because I think that we have all experienced the boom and bust cycle. Baby steps are the answer to the boom and bust cycle. So let's dig into it today. I have slides and everything. So, all right. Yes, September is kind of like a second January, which means that it's time for resolutions, and it's time for thinking that we're going to have new selves for the fall. But you know what? It's September 22nd. So I think that we are over that now. And if anything, I think it's been the September that's least like a January in my life. And I don't know if you've experienced the same, just because there's a little bit of less hope of a fresh start. It's life and everything still has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of chaos, and it's unsettling and uncertain. And so it's hard to make plans and progress when you aren't really sure what's going to be happening or what's going to come into your life or need to leave your life or anything. It's tricky and it is unnerving. But baby steps help us even then, because it's slow and steady progress. And one of the reasons why the New Year's resolutions or the new school year resolutions and that feeling of a fresh start leave us feeling discouraged and like it leads to the boom and bust cycle, because it's not really a fresh start. And we are ourselves, and life and all of that is not going to smooth itself out automatically in front of us if only we find the magic switch to flip. So we now more than ever want to be making slow and steady progress, because we can't predict what's going to be happening. We might not be certain about what our life will hold or how things are going to work or whether or not our husbands are going to have jobs or any of that. And so the idea of a system helping us get from where we are to where we want to be in a short amount of time is even more unrealistic than usual. And baby steps, which are part of iteration, which is something we are big on inside Simply Convivial Continuing Education, where you're not needing to even know what the final destination is. You just know the direction and that you're moving in that direction. That helps you make progress even when the final destination is uncertain or unknown. You still know the direction you should be heading and the good things to be doing. You can do them. And you can learn about what the next step is after you take a single step. So I am going to actually get into the workshop now instead of just riffing on tangents. So, okay. Well, welcome back home from your deployment, Robin. That's a big transition to make for sure. So this workshop is for you and tell me which one of these, if any, and you're in good company here. Which one of these or all of these has described you in the past or currently? How familiar do these sound? Perfectionism prevents you from getting started. Overwhelm stops you cold. Procrastination is a constant temptation that you give into often. You are easily distracted and feel scattered. Do any of those sound familiar? These are problems that we all face, that we are all familiar with. And the problem is sometimes our solution hunting. We experience these problems and we hunt the internet for answers that are a formula, that are, the single checklist that's going to make all the difference. We look for the magic answer that if we just insert into our life, it will take care of our perfectionism, our overwhelm, our procrastination, our distraction. And those can be tools that help, but we will always have to be wielding the tool and actually using it. The tool is not an autopilot tool. The system, planner, checklist, any of these things are tools that actually still require us to use them and use them well, use them intelligently. You are in the right place if these sound familiar. And these are exactly the situations that we are going to address and take practical steps to overcome. And if you want to get the most out of this workshop, you will want a pen and paper. We will be brain dumping. If you've been to any of my workshops before or taken a course, or if you're in membership, you know, we're going to start with a brain dump. So be sure that you have a pen and paper if you can, or you can come back to the workshop and listen again with your pen and paper in hand. And it might take some time. You might need some processing time during the workshop or after the workshop to think things through, to flesh out that brain dump. And you're probably going to experience resistance. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more near the end of the workshop. So you're going to need to be ready to hear resistance, hear complaints or objections in your mind, and be willing to dialogue and answer those objections that will pop up in your head. So let's start off with some definitions. What are baby steps? So it was interesting. I actually, a while back, Googled what are baby steps just to see. Like, this is a phrase, I don't know, I hear it thrown around a lot. I didn't make it up. I've heard it and I use it, but what does it mean? And there really actually wasn't hardly anything out there on what are baby steps. You know, some of the stuff was actually parenting things, like when should a baby take the first steps? It's like, no, baby steps are a thing, aren't they? So it's interesting to me how we sometimes use these phrases or expressions and don't have clear definitions of what they really mean or what they really entail. So since there doesn't seem to be a consensus on the internet about what actually makes a baby step, then that means I get to make up my own definition. But I would also love to hear if you have definitions. Have you thought about this before? And what would you call a baby step? How is it a baby step different from some other kind of thing? Yes, Fly Lady uses it. Maybe I didn't actually search specifically Fly Lady, but I would have thought she would have come up on Google for what is a baby step. Isn't it in the what if? Oh man, it's been too long since I've seen that movie. It was from a movie. Yeah, okay. Well, you would totally think that movie trivia would come up on Google. I don't know if I've seen the whole movie, but I have at least seen scenes. Yes. The smallest step that will still move me forward. I love that, Rachel. That's a great one. Okay, and Christine asks in the comments, she says, I have a hard time breaking down a project into smaller tasks. And that's exactly what this process is. So baby steps are taking your end goal, your project, the vision, whatever, and being able to break it down into smaller steps. And we'll talk about why you need to and how small they need to be baby steps. Oh, there we go. We've got some researchers digging for us right there. Thank you, Rachel. Stephanie says a baby step is something small and easy to do, so easy that I have no real excuse not to do it. Yes. Yes. And Christine in the question says, I make no progress on many projects because I cannot manage how large they are. And that is why we have to turn to baby steps and learn that practice of breaking a project down into baby steps. So we are going to actually do that together right now, aren't we? Is that the next slide? Okay, no, not quite yet, but that's what we are going to do in this workshop. So be thinking in the back of your mind of maybe a project right now that you are not making progress on, something that you are procrastinating, something that you just can't seem to get started on. Because we're going to actually do this. We're going to break it down into baby steps and talk about how to do that and then how to take them. So baby steps are actions, like step, right? It's a step is a verb. Baby steps are things that we do. So they're actions, tasks. And one of the main things I picked up from David Allen's Getting Things Done is that projects are not tasks. And so one reason why we have a really hard time getting started or making progress on projects is that they're really outcomes. We can see an outcome that we want, but until we break it down into its component tasks, we can't get there. So a project is an outcome. And then we want tasks that are baby size, bite size, small. A baby step is simple to start. It doesn't take resources you don't have or a lot of time to set up. If you have something that does take something you don't have or will involve some kind of setup before you can get started, then those become other tasks that have to be done before you can take that step. So one example, at one point I had a project in mind that I had listed thinking it was a task because it started with a verb. I wanted to recover our dining room chairs. They were atrocious because they were fabric and we had small children, and I wanted to recover the dining room chairs. Well, it stayed on my list and stayed on my list for many intervals, which is just like a chunk of planning time. So like 6 weeks, then another 6 weeks would go by and I'd put recover chairs until finally I realized, well, I can't do that until I have fabric. So I actually need to buy fabric, and I don't know how much fabric I need to buy. And actually, I don't even know how to take the chair bottoms off the chair. Like, I don't know how to take apart the chairs, actually. It's like there were all these things like that had to happen before I could recover the chairs. And that's why I wasn't, because recover chairs wasn't something I could do until I had done all of the prerequisite tasks. And it's the same thing with most projects. So we're going to come up with a process here to break down those into baby step tasks. And so they have to be simple to start, where buying the fabric has to happen before this other thing. They are actions that are quick to take. And this is where my own personal rule of thumb definition is going to come in a minute. So a baby step, this is the frustrating piece. A baby step also does not get the job done alone. The baby step will not finish the project. It will only move you one step forward. And perfectionism and procrastination and overwhelm will fight you. You will have that internal struggle over taking them. You'll discount them and roll your eyes. The more that we have given in to perfectionism, procrastination, and overwhelm, the harder it will be to take a baby step, even though they are small and simple, but that's all just in our heads. Physically and as far as time goes, they need to be quick and easy. And the final truth is that a baby step, all the baby steps add up faster than you'd think, and they end up taking you farther than you ever would have thought. Then all those doubts and arguments in your mind that stem from procrastination and perfectionism and overwhelm are wrong. And when you actually take those baby steps, you'll find out that it works. So why do we fight those baby steps? We just want to be done already. We want the project accomplished. Maybe we don't want to admit how much time it will take. And to list out all of the baby steps that would get us there seems like a lot. And we don't actually want to spend that much time getting to the outcome that we say that we want. So we have to be realistic. Maybe we're a little bit too proud for baby steps, right? Because we maybe think we should be beyond that. We maybe think we should already be at that outcome by now anyway. And so we just want to get there now. We're too good for baby steps, but baby steps. And I think that's why I like the baby part of it rather than small. But small also works. It points to the need to be humble as we work, and the need to not let perfectionism tell us that we should be able to have it done already and be there. And then there's just the instant gratification, microwave internet generation that we do just think, okay, here's the project. Let's just snap and make it happen. And that's not the way the world actually really works. So we have to put forth time and energy, and that needs to make us examine whether or not the project that we are trying to work on is worth the time and effort, because they can't happen all right away. They also can't all happen. So we are going to be forced to prioritize in a way that's maybe uncomfortable, and we'd rather not. We want to have it all, and so going to baby steps is going to make us make choices, make hard choices. So pull out that pen and paper. It is time to brain dump. Do you have a project or an outcome that you have been struggling to achieve or finish, accomplish, that either overwhelm or procrastination or perfectionism is just hanging you up with it? You pick one, not all of life and all the things. All the things brain dump. We have a guide for the all the things brain dump. That's not what this is right now, right here. Right here, we're going to actually break down a project into baby steps so that you can get the hang of it and see how it works. So pick one project or outcome that you just can't seem to get started with or to make progress on. Tell me in the chat what some of your examples might be, and write that up at the top of your paper. Maybe it's recover your chairs. What's been on your list that's just moved down from list to list to list and doesn't really ever happen. Editing personal photos, that's a good one. That's the kind of thing that gets procrastinated for sure. Vacation photo book. Yeah, so several photos. Digital cleanups, that's similar right there. I can see a theme. Finish reflooring the bedrooms and painting the walls. That's a big project. Decluttering storage closets, organizing and purging. These are great examples. These are just the kind of things that we want to have done, but we don't want to do, right? We want the outcome and we don't want to take the steps that will move us from here to there. We just want to jump to the outcome and have it done. So try to capture in words what the end goal is that you're after, and try to make it as clear and specific and concrete as you can. So like editing personal photos, what is the reason why you want to do that, and how will you know when it's done? The vacation photo book would be maybe when it's received in the mail. You can check that off. Like, what is the check off point for the project? That can be a hard one sometimes, especially for like decluttering or organizing projects, because there are a lot of different points at, like, how do you know when it's good enough? And that right there might be the biggest thing holding you up, is that you don't have a clear idea of even when the project will be done, what will count as it being done. So you have the project up at the top and a sentence for what the end goal is. Nice. That's a great one. So Tafath, did I say your name right? Says, I would consider my photo editing to be finished when I send folders or copies to the friends and family who were there at those events. So see how much clarity that brings to the situation, instead of being this vague and amorphous edit photos. It sounds like something that could be never ending. It's like, I'm making them ready to send to the friends and family who were there at those events, and then I'll do that, and then you know it's done. And there are still going to be more photos after you take it, but that is the end of this project. So what tasks will get you to that end project? And so I know someone mentioned reflooring and painting rooms. So you kind of start with, okay, we need to paint the walls and we need to redo the flooring, and start breaking down like what actual tasks are involved in those, because those are each projects actually. They're like sub projects. Do you have to tape the walls? You definitely have to pick the paint and buy it. You know, do you have the tools to do it, or do you need to buy the tools? What prep work do you have to move everything out of the room? So you just start listing as you think of things. This is brain dumping, so it doesn't have to be an organized, beautiful list. This is just the thoughts getting written down. What are the actual actions that will get you that outcome? And you know, sometimes it is a little bit of research being required. Like if I had to hang things on the wall, I would probably be Googling gallery wall examples and just find a picture that matched instead of like trying to figure it out myself. Or I would invite someone else over to do it, like have a friend come do it for me. As you're listing tasks, keep listing or breaking them down. Break down each task until it will take fewer than 10 minutes to complete the task that you've written down. And that's a little bit give or take, because buying paint, for example, if the paint store is farther than 10 minutes from your house, it's going to take longer than 5 or 10 minutes. But, imagine yourself at the counter ordering the paint and getting it and paying for it. That's a single task. So break it down until you have tasks that will take fewer than 10 minutes to complete. It can be hard. And sometimes you keep going and keep going. And really, the smaller that you can break them down, the more they are baby steps, right? So it's a process. And sometimes I think we just sit down and like, I'm going to make a to-do list. And that's how we try to get from project to baby steps. But until we have identified that project and the end goal, we can't make an adequate, effective to-do list. And a lot of times we can't just start off our task list thinking it's an end product. We need to brain dump first. You need to list out what you know you need to do, and then ask yourself if it needs to be broken down farther, and can it be broken down farther? And sometimes you get some things on that list, and then you step back and look at it and say, you know what? I thought it would be this, all these things, but I don't actually have to do this one. And I don't have to do this one. And so you make a to-do list from this brain dump process where you just get everything in your head written down. You're not trying to hold it and process it and evaluate it all in your head at the same time. You're using paper and pen and words to process and think through things. And it's much more effective, and it will help you get to those baby steps. Okay, after we've brain dumped and come up with a whole bunch of baby steps that we can take, then we have to exchange the perfect for progress. We have to admit that we aren't making progress just by having the goal. Wanting to do the project isn't actually enough. Wanting it to be done isn't good enough. We have to actually want to do it. So this is a mindset and attitude shift. And here are some mottos that will help you with this. And these are ones that Sarah Nelson likes to remind us of very often, and it's been very helpful lately. And I hope I remembered them all. So Sarah, fill us in if there are more mottos I was missing. Some is better than none. Just make it better. Progress over perfection. These are things we need to be telling ourselves as we do tasks on our list, as we do work towards our projects. It is not about getting to completion as fast as possible. It's about doing something to move the ball forward. And one way that we can do this, especially if you have something where maybe you don't know how much time something will take, like decluttering. You don't really know how much time that will take. And sometimes that can be hard to break down. But you can say, I will spend 5 minutes doing this. I will spend 5 minutes decluttering twice a day for 2 weeks. And then I'll see where I'm at. And that's mixing our baby steps with iteration. So I'll just clarify for those of you who aren't familiar with iteration. If you are not in Simply Convivial continuing education, you might not be familiar with it. It's one of the key core practices that we implement in Simply Convivial continuing education. And it means not trying to get from where we're at to where we want to be right away. We don't have to see the end from the beginning, because the end goal does actually change. Our life changes, the needs of our family change, our abilities and skills change. So what we need to actually do is make some progress and then evaluate and adapt. And this is flexible, realistic planning. So if it's decluttering, we might say, okay, I am going to declutter for 5 minutes or 10 minutes at a time, once or twice a day for 2 weeks. Then I'm going to pause and evaluate. And after actually making some progress and doing the work for a little bit of time, then you're able to figure out what the next step is. But when you are brain dumping and figuring out those baby steps, what we need to realize is that you don't have to have every single task for that project lined out ahead of time. You just need to get to the point where you have some tasks that you can do. And it's okay if the task list is incomplete, or if you aren't sure if you will actually be done by the time you've checked off all those things. The point is not coming up with the complete checklist, just like it's not getting the project complete in the blink of an eye. Instead, we're narrowing down and getting clear and concrete on what actually has to happen. And then as we take steps, more comes into focus. We realize how much we can actually accomplish or how little. And we end up learning what the next step is by taking a step and by getting started. So if you do picture someone walking on a trail, it's like walking on a trail where you're on a hike. There is a viewpoint that you're trying to reach, but there might be bends in the trail. You can't actually see it from where you're at, but the only way to end up seeing it is to start on the trail. You don't need to know exactly where the end point of the trail is to take the next step on the trail. So that's what we're trying to do here with baby steps, is identify the trail, but it might be a vague outline. Then you take some steps and you end up rounding a bend, and you end up, or maybe it's like a trail and we actually have terrible vision. So things don't come into focus until we get closer. So it's not about figuring out every little step before you get started. That is another form of perfectionism. Instead, you're brain dumping and you're coming up with these tasks that will take less than 10 minutes so that you have a step to take. And you can start making progress. And then as you make progress, you will actually make progress and continue to make progress. Momentum actually comes with motion, not with a plan. We gain momentum by taking steps, not by having it all planned out ahead of time. So one thing that we need to recognize with making progress and accomplishing projects or coming up with these brain dump lists is what those outcomes really are. And so we did that a little bit with the brain dump, but sometimes our expectations are out of whack. And that's another thing preventing us from making baby steps. Thinking that laundry is going to be finished. And that's just a self-defeating expectation, right? Because that's not actually the point of laundry. You do the laundry not to complete it once and for all, but just to keep the cycle going. The perfect system, if I just figure out the perfect system or the perfect checklist or the perfect routine, then I won't have to expend any effort at it anymore. That's a frustrating expectation. I ought to be better at this by now. Not helpful. Sometimes if we translate these into our kids and their schoolwork, we can see a little bit more how silly it is and how maybe, oh yeah, I actually do that too. It doesn't matter if you or your child thinks that they ought to be able to do fractions by now. They have to do the next thing. They have to learn the next concept where they're at. And it's the same with us. You can't get to fractions or algebra until you learn division. And if you aren't really good with those division facts, the practice. Like, that's what you need to be doing. Being frustrated about where you are not and what you can't do isn't going to help you. Practicing what you need to do to move forward is what's going to help. So we do this with comparison as well. If I just copy her cleaning list, then my house will be put together like hers. And I think especially when this is an Instagram or Pinterest thing, we're just assuming that her house is put together. And that's probably not true. Or it's some entirely different situation that you wouldn't actually trade for having a put together house. Okay, so here are some better thoughts, some attitude adjustments or mindset shifts that we can make to help us actually embrace and do those baby steps, take those baby steps. Tending my home, and you can see tending is getting that ongoing sense. Tending my home is my duty and joy. Making a home is an ongoing service of love. I can get started even if I can't finish. Some is better than none. Our home is meant to be used, and all systems always require effort to be run. Then we have to actually take those small steps. So we figured out up here, we figured out what those small steps are. And then we replaced our mental clutter and hangups, our attitude problems. And then we have to actually take action. Because this is where the momentum happens. So we need to remember that the point is never to have everything completed all at once and for all. But we are going to do something to make life better. One of the mottos I like to repeat, at least to myself, but also to my children, is leave it better than you found it. So it's a general, I like pack it in, pack it out. It's one step up from the camping admonition, but leave it better than you found it. Just do once, like if you've done that, you've made progress, right? If you've made it better than you found it, that's progress right there. That adds up. It really does add up. All right. So we've got to choose those baby steps. We listed them out. Then you can't take all of them, right? Identify one. Look at that list of less than 10-minute tasks. Which one seems easiest and most doable right now? Again, sometimes our pride or whatever gets in our way and we want to pick the best one, the one that's going to get us the farthest. And we kind of look at it trying to figure out which one is biggest to do, basically. And we're countering that perfectionist tendency by actually picking the smallest and easiest one and just doing that. Because it's by getting started and finishing one small task that builds the momentum and the traction in our lives. So we get going and we'll actually end up doing more if we feel that sense of accomplishment. We see progress being made by actually finishing a small step, taking a small step. Momentum builds with action, not the perfect plan. Okay, we'll have to make sure that those mottos, a printable with these baby step mottos, will be a part of baby step bingo in Simply Convivial Continuing Education in October. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Oh, it's about time to talk about that right now. Okay. So in Simply Convivial Continuing Education, we organize our attitude, our expectations what we are telling ourselves in our heads so that we can start actually organizing and managing our life. And that is, baby steps are a big part of that. And so we're going to be practicing this inside our membership. And I forgot to get the link up here, but if you are not a part, then it is open for enrollment right now. Yes, Stephanie says, it seems like cheating to start with something super easy, but it works. It does work. And sometimes we just need to take that humbling small step first before we believe it. Doing it is where the believing sometimes starts. And yes, many things require a mess before they begin to get better. Yeah, it's the messy middle. Things get worse before they're better. That it can be true as well. Okay, so it's going to be baby step bingo with the new addition of some printable motto cards to go with it so that we can practice building these baby steps into our lives and actually taking the small steps that seem insignificant but make a big difference. So for October, all our members are going to have access to printable motto cards. I'll say it a few times so that I can remember to write it down as soon as this is over. And a 25 task bingo card. So usually I refrain from telling you exactly what to do, but this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to have actual concrete tiny tasks to do to make your home a little bit better. And there are going to be prizes for people who make progress on their bingo cards, who take small actions that don't seem like they will make a difference, but do them anyway and see the momentum and the progress that actually builds when you start taking action. So it's going to be an action plan that's set up as a game, and inside the community we'll be cheering one another on and sharing our stories and wins so that we can build that momentum. And we'll have if you do get a bingo, all of our members who get a bingo on their bingo card will get a practical workshop on how to keep up the baby step progress in your life. It's going to involve EHAP and 10-minute transformation for sure, but it'll be about how to just keep that progress and momentum going with continued baby steps. We don't actually outgrow baby steps. So how do we keep it up? And how do we let them build upon one another? And then if anyone gets a blackout and does all 25 tasks, then those people get to come together on Zoom during a live session, and we're going to actually work through the process of creating a personalized homemaking routine. So one that is not just a cut and paste someone else's list into your own life, but figuring out what your life needs the most and what's just a busy work waste of time. We're not going to have the kind of thing where it's washing your blinds or your fake houseplants. Like, what's the actual necessary work where if it didn't get done, things become a disaster? And then how do we make sure those things really happen? We're going to come up with a realistic, non-busy work housework plan that fits each one of our needs. So that'll be fun because it'll be on Zoom and live and interactive. Of course, Abby is going to go for a blackout. I can't even make it hard for you because they're going to be all easy. So one thing that we just have to remember, especially if you found this or came to this workshop because you were hunting for the perfect system, the best way to plan the system that will get you and keep you organized in your life and home is that progress does not come after you've figured out the perfect system. The perfect system is not the first step. It's not the discovery that you have to make before you get progress. Progress comes one step at a time. The perfect system doesn't actually exist, but a workable, effective system comes as a series of small steps that we actually take. And we build it brick by brick or baby step by baby step. It comes after continued effort and progress and not before. So a lot of times we just put things out of order. You don't need to be overwhelmed by your housework, by your life. In fact, overwhelm might be a temptation preventing you from making progress. It might be your excuse for not making progress in your life. And at Simply Convivial Continuing Education, we beat back overwhelm. We don't allow overwhelm because we know that it's a feeling, that we can take small step actions to make progress instead. And even by taking seemingly insignificant baby steps, that feeling of overwhelm evaporates, because it's like the overwhelm is a fog that prevents us from seeing what's next, prevents us from even wanting to move forward. It's like a thick molasses soup fog. But by taking a tiny step forward and getting a little bit done, it lifts and clears. It is the way to bring in a different weather front in our minds and lives. So if that sounds like the help you need, then join us for Baby Step Bingo in October, and just at Simply Convivial Continuing Education anytime, because everything we do is centered on not letting overwhelm stop us, but finding those strategies and solutions in community with help and support that will help us make real, tangible progress and not get stuck by overwhelm or perfectionism or procrastination or any of those other issues that just plague us. It's not like, we take a few baby steps and then we're never overwhelmed again. Instead, this is a strategy that we know how to return to anytime we do feel overwhelmed. I'll tell you, I have felt overwhelmed this week. I felt overwhelmed last week. But I know what to do when I feel overwhelmed. And so it doesn't have to trap me. And you can learn that too with us. Join us for Simply Convivial Continuing Education. And for my members who are here, I look forward to doing Baby Step Bingo with you in October. It's going to be a lot of fun. The challenges always are.